Welcome back, Lenz's Comic Corner, Classic / Non-Classic. This is episode number 339 and Doubleshot number 268. I'm sorry this is coming a little bit late, but I had things to take care of first, and plus my Wi-Fi was down for this morning, so I wasn't able to. I could have recorded this then, but I had to go to church. But yeah. In the last episode, I mentioned that the next couple trades that I would talk about are have issues collected and written by the same writer. That writer is Dan Jurgens, a guy who I met at MegaCon. I met him at Comic-Con, Tampa Comic-Con last year. And if I see him again, I'll have more stuff from the sign. Now, one of these trades is a follow-up to something I have already reviewed. Okay? And that is Batman Beyond. Previously, I had reviewed Volume 1. This is Volume 2, City of Yesterday. Now, it's still the same creative team. Dan Jurgens, who does the writing, and Bernard Chang, who does the artwork. Now, unlike in the first book, where that one collects 6 issues, this one collects 5. Issues 7 through 11, and it takes place... Now, apparently some time had passed by between issues, between events of what happened in the first arc and this one. If I was to say how much time, my guess is probably about a month had probably passed by. Now, one thing that's interesting, though, about this one is that it does heavily tie into what happened. It does mix in elements not only of Future's End, with the whole thing that brought our eye, but also the Batman Beyond cartoon TV show. Case in point, that they have the Justice League in here. Though the Justice League is slightly different. Now, pretty much most of the ones who appear in this book are, in fact, the same people, except for Superman. He actually is different. Now, in the show, it really was the actual Clark Kent Superman, who had gray templates in his hair. This one actually is Superman's son, John. Yes, it is John. Now, on the cover, you can see that is Warhawk, Big Barda, Green Lantern, and that is Aquagirl. I don't remember her name. No, I don't really remember her name. But... also, it's revealed in here that, get this, the mayor of Gotham City in this future is Batwing himself, Luke Fox. Wow! That was actually a surprise when I saw that. Now, I told one person about this, and he wasn't interested in it at all because he wasn't picking up the book. Me, I like this series. Now, I know my friend Tivia was not a fan of the whole idea of Tim Drake being Batman Beyond, but... I guess that Dan Jurgens was like, okay, let's give this a try. And he this volume lasted for 16 issues. Now, there's one more trade I requested a purchase. Hopefully you get it. Now, currently, right now, the book is relaunched, and Terry McGinnis is back underneath the costume. Now, there's a character called Rewire who shows up in here. Pretty much he's there just to set up the last arc before Dan Jurgens wraps up this volume. Now, currently, the current volume is about 3 issues in. So that means he's written overall 19 issues for this series, which actually, that's not bad. At the rate he's going at, he might actually publish more than Volume 2. Because if you look at it right now, I mean, with this volume, he already published more than most of the volumes of the series, with the exception of Volume 2, which was 24 issues. I have read it. It really is 24 issues. This one has really nothing to do with TV show, but it does mix elements from TV show in here. Like, for example, Superman's costume. I should point this out. Yeah. The Superman that's seen in here. I should point this out. Yeah. Take a look at this Superman. This is what Superman looked like in this. He's right there. That's him right there. This is the costume Superman wore in the 2-part of The Call. Now, who are these other people who are in these tubes? You have the last Green Lantern. I think his name is something Rowe. Kaja Rowe, I think his name is. You also have Big Barda of New Gods. This is Warhawk. I don't know if this continuity, if his parents are John Stewart and Hawkgirl. I do not know if that's completely true. They have not officially confirmed that. And, of course, you have Aquagirl. But this right here, this is what the Justice League looked like during the events of the TV show. And, yes, Big Barda actually wore this outfit, not the Kirby outfit she's known for wearing. Now, pretty much, and one thing I gotta point out is the fact that, yeah, now, and of course stuff with, now when they find out that Superman's alive, I'm like thinking, this can't be Superman. Superman was much older. But yeah, like I said, it's John Kent, the son of Superman. So my guess is Dan Jurgens was tying into something else that I'm going to talk about in a minute. He was tying his other book he was writing at this point in time to this one, which, brilliant stroke of genius right there. As far as I know, after this arc was concluded, the issues that came after this didn't feature this Justice League at all. As far as I know, since Terry McGinnis' return, which he does return, by the way, the Justice League has not shown up since. I'm hoping that we could see a spin-off book, a new Justice League Beyond book. Maybe it could be written by Dan Jurgens. I don't know. This is currently one of 2 titles he's writing for DC. The other, of course, is Action Comics. Could he write a 3rd title featuring the Justice League of this universe? It's a possibility. And there's also the character Micron, who actually is the Atom of this universe. He is actually sort of a semi-original character to Batman Beyond. Now, as for Terry McGinnis' girlfriend, Dana, I think her name is, she doesn't show up in this series at all. This is really good. I do enjoy it. I'm not sure what my friend Tibia, basically, I do not know what his opinion on these particular issues that are collected in this trade. I know he likes the previous stuff that tied into the TV series, but this was kind of continuation of Future's End. Now, that's in the background. The Future's End stuff, the whole thing with Brother Eye, stuff like that. But this is still good. I give this a 9 out of 10. I actually enjoyed this. Next up is something I was talking about. This was something that was tying into Superman, Lois and Clark. Written by Dan Jurgens. Yep. And the artwork by Lee Weeks. Scott Hanna is the inker of this book. The inker of the issues. Now, the series only lasted for 8 issues. Now, my friend Tivia loves this series. Yeah, he was so happy to see the series as an ongoing. I think initially this plan was to be ongoing if Rebirth had not happened. But, yeah, this series, take a look at the title on top. Road to Rebirth. Now, the events of this series does continue in the pages of the Superman comic, while Action Comics takes place not long after this. Now, yes. Now, when I saw promotional stuff for this, basically one person pointed out that they thought that the costume that Superman wears, they thought this outfit looks like the New 52 costume just without the collar. Yeah, there was some criticism of the outfit. I personally don't have a problem with the costume. It's a really neat costume. Oh, and in case you're wondering, no, Clark does not wear glasses at any point in these issues. Yeah. It's not that currently Superman is in the Superman title, he is seen out of a Superman costume, but in Action Comics, he's always seen the Superman costume. He's never seen out of it. I don't honestly know why that is. Well, probably because there's another Clark Kent in there, which that probably gets another time. But this was really good. Especially since it featured Hank Henshaw in here. Now, it was brought up that Hank Henshaw, basically, how he became Cyborg Superman in the previous continuity. That actually is collected in trade recently. That happened in issue 450, which was about Adventures of Superman 450. That was about 2 years into the current run of Adventure Comics. That was 2 years into it. So, yeah, it was really good. Yeah, those issues are really good. I highly recommend you track it down. It's actually collected in a trade called Superman Man of Tomorrow, Book 1. Yeah, which those issues are never written by Dan Jurgens. But, yeah. Plus, also in here, while walking on the street, Lois and Clark actually run into Jimmy Olsen. No, they don't talk to each other, but it's not Jimmy Olsen from their universe, it's Jimmy Olsen of the current universe. Yes, Jimmy Olsen of the post-Flashpoint universe makes a cameo appearance in this series, along with running into Bruno Magnum, the head of Intergang, and they're taken down. Now, one thing I thought was really neat about this particular series was the fact that Superman had his own version of the Batcave. Why? Because his Fortress of Solitude was inside of a mountain. Yep. Now, I gotta show off the artwork in here. This artwork is fantastic by Lee Weeks. Yeah, Yeah, this artwork is fantastic. I praise Mr. Lee Weeks for this particular artwork. Now, I also gotta praise him for basically having his Batman Beyond book have a tie into this. Yeah, especially when it featured John Samuel Kent. Though in here his alias is John Samuel White, because until Lois takes over the place of the current continuity's Lois Lane, she refers herself as Lois White. But with the death of this continuity's Lois Lane, one thing I also got praise for Jurgens for doing now, when this book starts off, it starts off during Jeff Johns' first arc for Justice League, which is basically when the Justice League was first formed and he took on frickin' Darkseid. Yep, and that's when he first showed up in this universe. He was wearing, believe it or not, his classic costume. Yep, and here he is wearing his classic costume that Superman is known for. You can't really see the red underwear that much. Now, this was actually, there was a joke about this in the Superman title. That's actually something to break up the color scheme of the costume. I don't exactly remember. Tivia, if you're watching this, perhaps you can remember exactly. I think it was during the second arc of the series. It was just before the backdoor power with the Super Sons. What Clark said about the original Superman costume. Now, this is just pure greatness. I myself am not a big Superman fan, but I have enjoyed reading the pre-Flashpoint Superman stories. I've read pretty much almost all of them. Well, of the series that came out prior to Flashpoint, which was series like Adventure Comics, Superman Volume 2, the issues of Action Comics that came out right after Crisis on Infinite Earths. I've also read Man of Steel, well, the Superman of Steel series, and yes, I've read the Man of Steel miniseries by John Byrne. I've also read the Man of Tomorrow series, which was a quarterly book, kind of like how with Batman Chronicles, which that one was also quarterly as well. That book didn't last as long. Now, unlike, let's say, Batman Chronicles, where it lasted 23 issues over the course of about, I think it was almost about 6 years, Superman Man of Tomorrow lasted for 15 issues. And an issue a million. And that's simply it. But, yeah, Jurgens basically wrote the Superman title. And he wrote some issues of Action Comics and, of course, Adventures of Superman. Basically, you can kind of say he built upon his pre-existing knowledge he had of this particular Superman, of what stuff he wrote back in the 90s. Which, by the way, despite the 90s having crappy artwork at times, Superman was actually one of the very few characters who actually came out in the 90s perfectly fine. And he had very good writers on his books. Batman had the same thing. Marvel did not have the same touch as DC did in the 90s. But there were some good books published in the 90s, like Captain America, Iron Man, the Avengers. A lot of the really big AAA titles did have pretty good runs. I would say the only character who really suffered in the 90s was Spider-Man when it came to Marvel Comics. DC, the only thing that probably suffered was maybe the Justice League for like a couple titles. That was mainly around the mid-90s per se. That's when they started to suffer. But Superman, he went perfectly fine. Published a lot of really good stories from what I remember reading. But this I consider really good. Now, Tivia would probably give this a 5 out of 5. Even though it's not perfect, I do enjoy it. Now, I did give the Captain America book in my last episode a 10 out of 10. I'm not going to give this one a 10. I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10. Still close enough. But yeah, this is still pretty enjoyable. I highly recommend this to people who are fans of the pre-Flashpoint Superman. Fans of this version of Superman. Not the one that showed up in the current continuity 6 years ago. People are fans of the Superman they grew up with, starting with the late 80s and 90s. If you're fans of that Superman, I highly recommend this. Okay? Plus, also, you can read this as sort of a setup for the current Action Comics book that Dan Jurgens does right now, the current run of Action Comics. And, of course, Superman. Okay? So, that's it for this episode. Stay tuned for the next episode, which is episode 340. And the next episode will be a triple shot. Of what it's going to be, you'll find out in the next episode. Okay? I figure, though, episode 340 might be good enough for a triple shot. Okay? But until then, I will see you there.